that work? Are we live? Jump scare. I don't have any of my scenes set up. I hope this is working. I extra don't know because I can't actually figure out how to open the chat window. But we're learning as we go today. Not not in the way I wanted to, but sometimes you have to have some of the exciting times to go along with the less exciting times. I'm gonna have to figure this out. Um, well, perhaps another time. Maybe for now I can just follow chat in my browser. That makes sense too. Just give me a minute here. I'll just have my own stream running in another window. That makes sense, right? That's something people do. I don't know. I'm trying. I'm trying, you guys. Hello. Okay. Yes, I see people now. Wonderful. I also see me. That's very distracting. Let's see. Let's get this message unpinned. And I'm gonna try to get this chat. Can you do pop out? Can you have chat in a pop out window on Twitch? I can't remember. I can't remember. Well, if you can, I'm having trouble finding it. Oh, pop out chat. There we go. Put that over there. Close that window. Okay. Easy. First try. Okay. Oh no, I'm really quiet. Then it wasn't much of a jump scare. I don't know what to do with that. Hold on. I don't know why it's even quieter than normal. It should be slowly getting louder over time. Why don't I just type? Typing is faster, Jonathan. Let's put that at there. No. How about? Hmm. I'm having trouble. Okay, the highest it'll go is plus 26 decibels. I don't know why it has to be at plus 26 decibels for it to be barely audible, but that's where we're at right now. It's a day. There is certainly not any compression going on. This is a dynamic mic, but I could switch over to my condenser mic. That would solve the issue. It's just that in the past that has caused some issues of their own, but at this point, it's worth it. Bear with me a minute. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. Long story short, I have not been able to get Twitch. Sorry, no. I have not been able to get OBS running the way that it used to pre-computer upgrade. Um, I know it's been a few months, but I've just got a lot going on, and it hasn't been the highest priority, unfortunately. Um, so I'm making do with what I have to work with. Is this another Windows 11 related issue? Sort of. Um, I wish that I could just continue using my old setup the way I used to without having anything changed. But the last time I tried streaming from Windows 11, I had like 5 frames per second streaming to you guys at most. And that's not serviceable. And this morning when I tried, um, it you know, hold on, I can work while I talk. Um, this is gonna be weird. No, there's not really a way for me to work while I talk. Actually, I take it back. Well, I can do a little bit. Um, what was I saying? Today, I booted up my computer into Windows, and it said that I needed to update 4 drivers. So I clicked update drivers, and it updated 1 driver, and then it said all your drivers are up to date. And so I had it stuck in this loop where my system tray was telling me I had 3 drivers that needed to be updated, and the updating utility saying that I was completely up to date. So I gave up. Um, as far as Linux goes, OBS is running fine on Linux. I don't have any problems with it. But because the file architecture of Linux is so different from Windows in terms of which files are where, I just have not had the energy to go through and painstakingly copy all of the configuration files over to the directories they have to be in Linux to work. Um, and I also haven't had the energy to just manually copy everything, all of my scenes over to OBS on Linux. So until I have the energy for one of those 2 things, we're going to be having some trouble. We're going to be experimenting. For the uninitiated who might watch at a later date, so not me, uh, might sound like it reduces quality. Oh, no, 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 no. Totally different. Sound compression is very different from video compression. Okay, give me a minute. I'm gonna switch mics. Hello? Okay, there we go. There we go. There we go. There we go. Wonderful. Okay. Speaking of audio, um, I forgot to get Spotify up. Ba-bum. Oh wait, no, it's too loud. Ah, good ol' Seren. Okay. Oi! Oi! How's the volume? How's the volume? Yes. Seren is absolutely beautiful. So this track is from the Clair Obscur soundtrack. Ugh. I really want to do a video essay on Seren as a whole. I really hope that I have the ability to do that someday. I'm actually gonna be going on a little bit of a mental health adventure later today. Using let's say an alternative form of medicine. So we'll see if that helps me. Mic sound is low in general? Okay, thank you for letting me know. I can fix that. Good adventure, yes. Very good adventure. That's the plan. Ba-ba-da-da-da. Is that better? It looks better. The bars are all yellow now instead of all green. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's gonna be a good time. I'm gonna move my mic a little so that I can be in frame and audible at the same time. Wow! Oh, I lost in Revenant to an ad break, I think. Alright, well, thank you both for being here. I lost our place. But I know. Okay, here we are. Here we are. Here we are. I found it. How's the volume now? Give me a holla. Okay. Trying to get comfortable and center screen and audible all at the same time. What a project. I hope that I'm audible here. Is it still kind of quiet? It looks like it might still be kind of quiet. Turn myself up just a little bit. All right. Well. Yes, we're eating strawberries today. Music's a bit loud. Beep bop boop. Wah wah wah. I can still turn myself up further too, because it shouldn't be that close a comparison. This also explains, at least to me, why the dynamic mic was so quiet, because I'm now putting plus 10 decibels into my condenser mic, which shouldn't be necessary. So I need to figure out what's going on with my sound settings in Linux. Unfortunately, as much as I do prefer Linux to Windows, there are definitely some things that just don't work the same. And so it's been difficult. We must hear Jonathan's voice directly in our brains. Yeah, I mean, where else would you hear it, right? That's how sound works. I mean, that's how hearing works. Until recently, only niche idealistic nerds tried to aspire to make common apps, programs, games cross-compatible, so it's more that most of the tools and background apps and drivers have traditionally been developed and maintained by individuals. The latest Veritasium video actually highlights how this can go wrong on a global user business national security scale sometimes. Yes, I haven't seen that video, but my friend has brought to my attention that The inherent problem with Linux is that since everything is community run, that means that there is no... I mean, like, as much as we all despise our corporate overlords, the fringe benefit is that when you have corporate overlords running your software updates, they are legally held accountable for making sure that every patch is just like the utmost security, and you just don't get that with a community run. Like I mean, like, here I haven't updated Linux today because I sometimes forget to do that still, but let's give it a shot. Yeah, it's been like 2 days since I ran updates, and I am currently updating 181 programs. Every single one of those programs is managed by a completely different group of people who I am trusting to do their own security checks. It's a lot of trust with Linux. But that really is like the only downside. In nearly every other regard, having a community-run support system is actually a good thing. Accountability equals something people are willing to pay money for, indeed, yeah. Too bad big corporate tech recently have become less accountable, despite us paying them, which is why I have penguined. I have embraced the penguin. Anywho, let's eat some strawberries. So for anyone who doesn't know, this is my father's first publication, Eat the Strawberries. We are most of the way through the book at this point, which is great because I was having trouble reading it on my own, and so this has gotten me to actually read my dad's book. Not that I'm reluctant to or don't find it interesting, but these last 2 years, really, these last 1.5 years since I kind of made my big announcement of like, hey, it's gonna be a really long time until I have a video out again. Kissis doesn't count. It's just been... I've been struggling with some things my whole life, and it's really become clear to me since that point that I'm not getting better, and that's a hard realization to make, but it's also a clarifying one. I now, for the first time in my life, consider myself to be a disabled person, and ironically that has opened a lot of doors, because once you start thinking of yourself as disabled, you start looking for help a lot more actively. All of that to say, things are hard for me. Anyway, we're like your book club, but you do all the reading for us. Does it... I've always gone back and forth on this. Does it still count as reading if it's an audiobook? I think so. I don't see why not. I know that there are cognitive benefits to physically, visually reading, because that is a different skill from language comprehension. I mean, from speech comprehension. But I don't know. I still think it counts as reading. You're still having to interface with the same ideas in the same way. All right, let's now that I was supposed to start stream 36 minutes ago. Let's get into the book. I will say I took a little peek ahead, and we hit the ground running with this chapter. An early 21st century American disaster. Here is an example of conflict-overwhelming conversation at a large scale. What snowflake liberals and snowflake conservatives have in common, what makes them fragile little snowflakes, is that they both see themselves as victims of the other's obviously ridiculous impositions. If you read definitions of liberal and democracy side by side, they line up pretty closely. Yet, in America today, middle-of-the-road moderates are caricatured as anti-American leftist commies, and actual liberals are dismissed entirely with accusations that they are completely out of touch with reality, or worse, socialists. Gasp. It says gasp. Liberals want to conserve things like the planetary ecosystem and civil rights and advance generosity toward those who have not fared well with things as they are. To be conservative is to conserve, protect and preserve something, but somehow conservatives are never conserving endangered species or the environment or civil rights. Their allegiance is not even to themselves, but to their mythical cultural identity, even when that allegiance works against their own pragmatic interests. Quote, "The hallmark of an open mind is not letting your ideas become your identity. If you define yourselves by your opinions, questioning them is a threat to your integrity. If you see yourself as a curious person or a lifelong learner, changing your mind is a moment of growth." Adam Grant. You've done some work on yourself, and from what you've shared, you've found at least okay, I'm not having a stroke. There was a typo there. Possible treatments and different ways of thinking, good to celebrate little victories. That's true, yes, I am definitely making progress, even though so far that progress has just been crossing things off of a list, really. Like, okay, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. I mean, by finding out everything that doesn't work, you have to narrow in on what does, right? I am a typo? Don't say that about yourself. You're so much more than a typo to me, no matter what anyone says. Note that cultural identities develop organically over tens, hundreds, and thousands of years. This inevitably makes all cultural identities something of a patchwork. As such, they are frequently self-inconsistent, even to the point of failing to observe the moral code they proclaim as their own, and even when their actions are clearly both hypocritical and self-damaging. It is well known that so-called conservatives often vote for people and policies that reduce their own rights and militate against their own fictional financial well-being, education, and even their physical health. Inside and outside the US, there are frightfully many instances along the lines of, life is precious and we must not kill, except for, heathens, infidels, black people, gay people, gypsies, Jews, Muslims, Christians, and other sects or women who show their hair in public. Conservatives can have inquisitions and witch burnings. They can be Nazis or KKK members or Proud Boys or fly passenger jets into office buildings, hide military operations under hospitals and schools, rape and dismember parents in front of their children or children in front of their parents. They can decry genocide and then commit it. Why is it that we are so prone, so willing, so eager to engage in conflict instead of conversation? Why is a war-inspiring failure to observe what is so compelling and recurrent? The American dream was to achieve middle-class circumstances. It seems to have morphed into becoming fabulously wealthy. Why isn't it to create and contribute to a society in which no one is hungry or homeless, all full-time jobs pay a living wage, and everyone is treated with dignity? This is not a rhetorical question. What is it in our culture that leads us to operate the way we do? What would we have to change in the culture to change our behavior? What are the actual objections to making a humane society our collective goal? What is wrong with our society, with so many of us as individuals, that concern for the welfare of other people is routinely attacked as un-American? Quote, "I am fascinated by how the behavior of people who took 3 pieces of pizza because they thought it would run out, and the people who took 1 piece for the exact same reason, is such a perfect encapsulation of American beliefs about community." Spencer Noble. I haven't outright said this publicly before, but I'm getting more and more willing to and more frustrated about current events. I've come to the point where I think that it is actively detrimental to behave as though it's okay to have conservative values. I truly think that the best chance that the world has of getting better within the next few generations is if we do the same thing with conservative values that we did with witch trials and segregation. Like, it needs to become... It'll never be a thing of the past, but neither are witch trials or segregation. But there's a lot less than there used to be. And you can lose your job if somebody finds out you support those things. And I think people should I think people should start losing their jobs if they are publicly known to have conservative values. I think we need to get to a point in the cultural ecosystem where that is taboo. Not because I think that those thoughts should be censored, but because those thoughts are really obviously ridiculous and harmful, and we disserve everybody, including conservative people, by pretending otherwise. I think that our surest step forward is to start condemning not conservative people, not the conservative parties in politics, but conservative values themselves. That way it's not an attack against any group of people. That way it's not blind allegiance to whoever isn't that party. It is still critical thinking, independent thought, open for discussion, open for analysis, open for questioning. Just a completely honest dialogue about how not okay it is to pretend that that works. Because that politeness kills people. We've seen that in the US more than ever in this last year. Politeness kills people if you're being polite to the wrong things. Tolerance requires intolerance of intolerance. And I am intolerant of conservative values. The end. A conflict. It's a matter of getting them to face the truth of how they're hurting people and themselves. And again, I don't think that, like, I am not under the impression that changing people's minds is an option. I think that what's the phrase? That train has left the station, that boat has long sailed, something like... I don't think that's an option anymore. However, I don't think we necessarily need to change people's minds. I think that because most people aren't beholden to conservative values, like, that's an objective fact. Most people do not subscribe to conservative values. By a small margin, but a significant one. And I think that if that majority is to just become really unflinching in this idea that, no, that's not a valid opinion for you to have, because it is not based in reality. If we attach ourselves to that, then no, we're not going to change any minds, but I think that it would create social pressure such that future generations would just be emotionally discouraged from getting too lost in the sauce and that kind of thinking. And I recognize that seems like it has inherent ethical and philosophical problems, because I believe, and certainly I think most people believe, everybody thinks they believe, that good ideas should stand on their own merit, and we shouldn't resolve to tactics like psychological warfare or intimidation or brainwashing or propaganda or anything like that. Here's the thing, though. Most people are not very smart. I'm not saying that in a disparaging way. I'm saying that as one of the difficult realities that we have to face. Most people are not very smart. Most people do not closely examine the causes of their political beliefs or the ripple effects that their political decisions have. Most people can't do that, and that's fine. We have to acknowledge that, though, because what that means is that most people follow the herd politically. So we need to condition the herd to be something worth following. That's the only way. And as proof that it works, look at conservatives. The ones that don't have the scruples getting in the way of thoughts like, well, we shouldn't do that with our ideology. We shouldn't force that on people. They don't care. They force it on whoever they want. And I think if we can take one thing away from their playbook, it's that it works. Not the policies, of course, but the intimidation tactics, the brainwashing. And again, I'm not saying that we intimidate people. I'm not saying that we brainwash people. I just think that if we very openly, very honestly, very transparently say, these ideas are bad and this is why, people will listen in future generations. If we're stalwart with that. In the same way that, well, I was going to say in the same way that, we are taught in school that the Holocaust was a bad thing. Not everybody thinks that anymore, haha, but, point is, there is plenty of precedent for taking once popular political beliefs and making them completely unacceptable to express in public. And I think that that is our best tool. Tolerance requires intolerance of intolerance. Oh wait, no, sorry, gotta go back. Also a way of getting it to hit them on a personal level. Yeah, sadly, most people have surface level understanding. Yeah, and again, that's not like a moral failing. That's not something that anybody should feel bad about. It's not anything that, like, nobody wants to admit that about themselves. Like, we all like to think that we're relatively smart people. We like to think that. And unfortunately, it's not true a lot of the times, and that's fine. It's just, we need to acknowledge that truth in order to make species-wide decisions democratically. Because if we're going to have, like, a people's voice, a people's movement thing, which historically has been a flawed but the best option in terms of organizing ourselves, we have to acknowledge that most of those voices are not as informed as the ones that we should be letting make the most waves. I mean, democracy is designed by committee with a terrible committee. And I don't say that because I think that there's another system we should be using instead of democracy. I say that as a means of saying democracy is the best system possible, and I hate it. I think it's a garbage system. But pretend Linux didn't exist. Pretend you had Windows 11 and you had Apple. And like, Apple makes a good product, but you can't do everything on Apple that you can do on Windows. And so if you aren't being serviced enough by Apple, you have to use Windows 11 in this fictional universe where Linux doesn't exist. And I am saying that there is no Linux of political systems and government systems. You've got Windows and you've got Mac. That's it. I'd rather be on Windows. Anyway. Tolerance requires intolerance of intolerance, indeed, though it's also impossible to parent everyone. Yeah, because everyone's an adult. I mean, well, all adults are adults. Jonathan Baruch, 2026. All adults are adults. Though a lot of the problem is also tribalism. Yes, I do think that tribalism is the primary problem that our species has. Like, truly, I think it is the single largest problem. Tribalism is also people's coping with needing a place to belong. Yeah, so conservatives are going to make an echo chamber no matter what you do, I fear. Well, yeah, there will be, there will always be echo chambers, and I do think that one of the worst things about the internet is that it allows minority opinions to seem strong and plentiful because you just go to the corners of the internet where every wrong person in the world has collected to be wrong together. Some adults act more immature than kids, though. Yes, they do. Their intimidation works, and when they want to get shit done, they come together in an angry wave. Yes, they do. Yeah, there are always going to be echo chambers, and there are always going to be tribes. And as I think my dad said earlier in this book, or maybe it's just something he and I talked about privately, I don't remember now, but tribalism is not a bad thing. And we all find it vastly important. Every single person in human history has wanted a tribe and felt better when they were in a tribe. It's just how we are. It's how we're built. And that's fine, but it is something we have to be aware of because it comes with a lot of vulnerabilities. I mean, the main reason that people who subscribe to conservative values are so angry, in my opinion, is that they fear that if they look closely at the assumptions that they take for granted, they will find out, one, that their beliefs have been hurting people on a massive scale, and two, they will no longer have the respect of their tribe. Most people are not willing to deal with either of those, let alone both. That's why it's so hard to convince people. Even in Orwellian situations where they're denying exactly what they're seeing right in front of them. If you've got to choose between acknowledging truth and having people to talk to that respect you, most people are going to choose the second one. Again, not a condemnation, not a judgment, just a truth. I think there's a way to hack the system and solve global warming. Awesome, glad to hear it. Make there be an ultra prestigious prize or award, needs to be a physical thing to be awarded with huge international ceremony with sickening pompousness. And then you inform the current US administrator about it. That's funny. There are 4 lights. What? I don't know what that means. It's what some Trump supporters have felt in this second term. Some left after realizing they were duped or felt that he was too extreme, yet some stayed because, like you said, they did not want to admit they were wrong. Yeah, I'm genuinely surprised and impressed and proud of the people who eventually said enough is enough. I will always wonder, why did it take this long? I will always wonder, why now? I will always have questions, and I will always find fault in those people. But also, I'm really grateful that it happened. And I recognize that, I mean, I've talked about this before. Every time you fail to have the courage to admit you were wrong, you make it harder to admit you were wrong. Every time you double down on your wrong belief, you increase the embarrassment you'll face when you have to walk it back later. So every time you stay on the wrong side of history, you make it much more likely that you will stay there. And so, as many questions as I have for the people who stayed as late as they did, I have to admit that they are extremely brave for finally breaking from the pack. And I'm glad that there's enough of them that they're able to support each other and do it together. Unfortunately, they probably still have conservative values for the most part, because most people don't see that the current state of politics in the United States, this is the end game of conservative values. Actually, that's not fair. That's not true. This is the final conclusion of conservative values. The difference is that the end game of conservative values is not to consolidate power for a wealthy, callous few. That's not the goal of conservative ideology. The goal of conservative ideology is to create an environment where base human instincts still serve us, which they don't. And the reason that that ends up consolidating power for a wealthy, callous few is that the wealthy, callous few know how to use that mythology to their advantage. And they do it. There are X lights as a reference to 1984 that I was taught with Star Trek TNG. Oh. I'll be real, I haven't read 1984 in 17 years, so I forgot. Imagine how embarrassed Galileo felt after thinking the Earth wasn't the center of the galaxy. Silly. Silly Billy. Yeah, imagine... I don't know enough history to say... Like, did... I don't remember when public opinion shifted to it being, like, socially acceptable to believe that the Earth revolves around the sun. I can't imagine a world where somebody would be put to death for saying that the Earth isn't the center of the universe. What the fuck? Even if I strongly That would be like if we sentenced flat earthers to death. To death! For believing the Earth is flat. What the fuck? How do you rationalize that somebody is such a threat to society that it is the government's obligation to kill them because of where they think Earth is? What? That's fun. I like that sound. I like making that sound. Catholic Church, what a place. Yay. Regarding the value and challenge of admitting conservative values being less than useful, the Catholic Church has come a long way in the past 100 years, though they still have some ways to go. Yes.
Agreed on both counts. Jonathan's squeaks intensify. Anyway, weren't we eating strawberries? Here's my dad's conflict resolution template. Quote, whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question. What fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I am about to criticize? Marcus Aurelius. The following is one way to think about navigating conflict. It's not the way, nor a rigid script. It's meant to stimulate thought and discussion. Oh, really quick. I didn't say this, and I think it's a really, really, really important point. And a lot of times when I talk with friends and family, people misunderstand what I'm trying to say with this. When I say that most people are not very smart, I am not at all saying that is, like, I'm not at all saying that is a political partisan issue. I'm not saying that one party is on average smarter than the other. I do think that it is likely that on average left-leaning individuals are probably a little smarter than right-leaning individuals, but I think that gap is much smaller than leftists want it to be. I think that there are a lot of really, really dumb leftists who, if left to their own devices, would never find leftist ideals, and if raised in a conservative environment, would never consider leftist ideals. They are leftist for the same reason most people are Christian. Their parents were. But that's not a bad thing. I mean, it's an inconvenient thing, because it means that ideas aren't worth their own merit. But what it does mean is that if we turn the tide so that conservative values are no longer seen as acceptable, people will go with that. People will not question that as much. And those that do still have the courage and the wherewithal to question it will come to the correct conclusion, which is that conservative values are harmful. Catholic Church might have felt his defection a lot like a betrayal. Yeah, I am sure that that's what it was. It's just difficult for me to understand by modern standards. I understood what you meant by the smart comment. Okay, good. They go so far left, they go right. In some cases, yeah. But I'm also talking about, like, sometimes I'll just read Facebook arguments. And I remember just seeing, like, there was one thread where both sides of the argument, and granted, like, the conservative person in this argument very well may have been a bot, for all I know. But I think that the left-leaning person in the argument was probably a real person, just because there isn't as much motivation to make leftist bots. But he was saying stuff like, everybody knows that, and then said something that's obviously untrue. I don't remember what it was. This was months ago now, but I was just like, yeah. Being really confidently and obviously and provably wrong is not a partisan issue. That happens across the spectrum. Because people are dumb. We're dumb. The smartest of us are really dumb. It is a physical... Sorry, I'm dumb. It is a physical limitation placed on us by the structure of our brains. There is a soft cap to how smart we can be, and it's not very high. But that's not to say that differences between relatively intelligent and relatively unintelligent humans are unimportant. I think they're quite important. I think they are inconveniently important. But we should never make the mistake of thinking that the best of us know everything, or even almost everything. As we discussed in this book earlier, 100% of the time, we don't know over 99% of what's happening. There are also some right-leaning people who are hyper-intelligent specifically about how to manipulate others with an audience. I go back and forth about that. I think that there are two kinds of intelligent conservative. I think there's the evil kind. Need I say more? And I think that there is the person who is genuinely very intelligent, but for one reason or another, be it tribalism or a difference in ethical priorities and values, for one reason or another, they've lost the plot. And they have, through totally intelligent deductive reasoning, made some conclusions that on a macro scale are not actually helpful. Because guess what? Smart people do that. We fuck up intellectually all the time. I realized that I just referred to myself as a smart person, and I feel like that's presumptuous, and I apologize. But the secret's out. I do think of myself as a smart person. Sorry. I know that's not something you're supposed to say. And obviously there are many who would disagree. My point is, being smart does not mean that when you think really hard about something, you're right. It doesn't mean that. That's more likely to be true, but it doesn't mean that. Facebook is where logic dies. So is Twitter. Personally, I find that these people are easier to spot when they are conservative in the first place, so they probably exist on the left side too. Oh, the manipulators? Yeah. Oh, there are total assholes who are leftist. I've found that one of my least favorite kinds of people is I don't know how to describe it concisely, but like a self-serving leftist, by which I mean, I've met some people, I'm sure you have too, where it really seems like the only reason they consider themselves left-leaning is because they're a minority. Like, for example, I didn't actually have this professor in college, but there is a professor at one of the colleges I went to, who is an asshole by every metric. He is also very interested in some very good, worthwhile ideas about the ways that we fail young men in this country. And he's also gay and very pro-LGBT rights. But those are the only left-leaning things about him. And I can't help but notice that being left-leaning in both of those cases serves him personally. I think some people are leftist just because being conservative directly goes against their personal benefit. But they are beholden to conservative values. They just don't vote conservative because, in their case specifically, it is openly obvious to them that conservatives don't have their best interests at heart. And that is one of my least favorite kinds of people. Because it's like, look, you came over to my house, which is about inviting everybody and making as many people happy as possible. And you said, just me, though. Actually, now that I think about it, it's super United States of him. Because the story of the United States, as all of you know, is that a bunch of white men said, we don't like that you're taxing us and then not spending that money on us. So they made a country where England couldn't do that. And then they taxed people, and then they didn't spend money on those people. This country is born on hypocrisy and exceptionalism, not to mention mass murder. So, I mean, maybe the guy's just patriotic. Being leftist for selfish reasons is about as American as you can get. Sorry, about as US as you can get. I try not to use America to mean the US because that's an obnoxious thing to do, and I'm trying to get better about it. It's colloquial. Like, I mean, my dad refers to people in the US as Americans in this book. But I know that it does bother people from other American countries, and so I've been trying to curb my use of that phrasing in recent years. The social media in general, really, yeah. You are a smart person. Well, thanks. Well, it's okay if you say it. Even the best of us can't know everything. Yeah, this is why I sometimes am pretty unnerved about how highly regarded even some science communicators are. While the lesson of the science communicator usually is help you think critically, they also give people something to parrot and regurgitate, which makes all of this just so complicated. Yeah. Because again, most people need those sound bites to parrot and regurgitate, because that is the closest thing to thinking that they'll ever do, is just hearing something from somebody they respect and being like, yeah, that's probably true. Okay, next topic. But yeah, in the same way that, like, Siddhartha Buddha always said, like, hey, you know what you're gonna do? You're gonna take everything I say that helps you. You're gonna pretend I didn't say the rest. Like, not in those words. I mean, you're not going to whitewash somebody else's teachings to fit your beliefs, but the goal is that, I mean, everybody who can think critically should. Everybody who can analyze their own beliefs and push past that discomfort and try to get to ethical purity and as close to factually accurate as possible, regardless of how difficult that is. Anybody who can do that should, but we shouldn't find those who can't do that as morally bankrupt or failing in some way. Some people just can't do that. I wish they could, but the evidence is clear. Most people can't. So we've got to work with that. I physically can't call myself smart. It's a problem. I think a lot of people have that problem. Self-serving leftist. In Norway, we call those champagne socialists. That's cute. It even has a Wikipedia page. That's funny. Science itself is an effort towards trying to make data uninterpretably bare bones and unchallengeable as physically possible, even though that doesn't mean that scientists' words necessarily are equally data. Yeah, I think that's maybe the single biggest problem that scientists face regarding communication with the public, is that the public wants science to be right, or else it's useless. Why are you going to challenge the things that I hold dear if you're not even right? Well, because if we don't do that, you're still not going to be right. And you're not going to be right far more often. Yeah, scientists are wrong a lot. It's their job to find out where other scientists have been wrong. What, you think as soon as science was invented back in, I'm assuming Greece, but maybe it predates Greece. Fuck you, Lima. Sorry, I don't like the bird. What was I saying? Yeah, imagine the first ever scientific experiments just immediately found undeniable truths. If I don't outlive this bird, I will kill myself. I recognize that that's an impossible sentence. Which is why it's funny. In fairness to wait, I already read that. I think science is regarded to come about through the Renaissance. What? What? I can't parse that sentence. Don't some birds live a long time? Yeah, conures live, I think, around like 20, 25 years. And he's like 3. So it's much more likely, like, the most likely scenario is that my current living situation just is over before that's a question. Because good God, let me tell you, I am not going to spend the rest of his life with him. I refuse, categorically, on principle. I will not accept that for me. I deserve better than to live with Lima for the rest of his life. Bird will live to 100 to spite you. I only put it past him because he's so dumb. He's so dumb. You pondered when science was invented. I think that's regarded to be through the Renaissance. No. I mean, the scientific method, yes. But science as a concept, I mean, that's ancient. I mean science in, not the loosest terms, but like the most rudimentary terms. The idea of experimentation and trying to learn more objectively about the world, even if it goes against common mythology. But yeah, scientific method is definitely Renaissance. Which is funny it's actually really funny to me that, like, the phrase scientific method makes it sound so sophisticated. And it really just boils down to, like, all right, you think something might be true or something might be false? Let's carefully think about that and see if it holds up to experimentation. Like, I am oversimplifying, but that's kind of the entire scientific method. It is the most basic of all good ideas. We've romanticized and conflated the ideas of science with experiments. In ancient Greece, science was just knowledge, what smartasses know to be true. Reproducibility defines science. Yeah, but I still think that I still don't think it's correct to say that science is only a few hundred years old. I just don't think that that is the most honest and complete way to describe it. There have been truth seekers as long as there have been people. And I don't mean people who come up with myths, I mean actual truth seekers. I consider that science. I consider actual pursuit of the truth to be science. Hello, Manon. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but welcome. Humans want to know stuff that will most likely never change. Agreed. We're very good at wanting to know stuff. Even right now, before the medieval period, and none was finding new medicines and such. Oh, sorry, even right before. I'm like, right now. As far as I know, the idea of using experiments and taking notes properly isn't that old. Probably not. Anyway, here's my dad's example of a way to think about navigating conflict. 1. Establish a relevant shared goal to which the conflict is an impediment. Conflict usually exists at a level lower than some shared goal that is more important. If there is a shared higher level goal, identify it. You want something and I want something else, but we both want a durable peace, if not a prosperous partnership. We both want freedom from being imposed upon unduly by each other's thoughts, feelings, goals, and actions. Sometimes this is not true, and in that case there is no way forward. Maybe one person is out to get the other, or is in it only for themselves, or is otherwise acting in bad faith. Maybe one has given up believing a good outcome is possible and is unwilling to try anymore. Maybe the parties involved want things that actually cannot coexist. Find an exit from this situation. If this dominates your interactions, find an exit from the relationship. If this dominates your relationships, you are repeatedly doing something wrong. Even Newton himself was considered a natural philosopher, so he was philosophizing of nature. Huh. I forgot that the term scientist is as new as it is. 2. Listen and understand the other person. Make it clear to them that you understand how it looks to them. Quietly listen, encourage more disclosure, don't interrupt. At thought completion points, summarize what they have said and ask in an agreeable way if you got it right. Let them correct or augment your understanding. Confirm whatever new information you have received. When they seem to be done, state that you understand, which will be credible due to your previous demonstration of genuine listening and checking in along the way. Your tone should sound like understanding, not like preparing to pounce, and this should reflect how you truly feel. 3. Explain your own thoughts and feelings and get them to show that they understand you. Reverse the roles for step 2. 4. Summarize what they said and what you said without judgment or competition. Restate the shared goal. Say something to the effect of, in light of what we each have said and our shared goal, what else is true? When that seems to have run its course, shift to, so what are our next steps? Discuss. 5. Make a proposal. I propose that I do this and you do that. That way we get this result in line with our shared goal. Seek agreement with modifications as needed, possibly starting from their proposal instead of yours. I also want to add, I read an article a while back that really stuck with me. It was talking about conflict in the workplace, but I think that this applies universally. It was saying that the most effective way to resolve a conflict without just like buckling to whatever the other person is saying unconditionally, the best way to do it is to find a common goal, to find out what common ground you do have. Like if your boss is mad at you for not meeting their unrealistic deadline or whatever, like that shouldn't continue to be a conversation of either you did something wrong or you did not do something wrong. That best works if it evolves into a conversation of how are we going to adjust our expectations and behaviors so that we reach the goals we're looking for in the future. And that might still get you fired, but you're a lot less likely to be fired than if you're just like, yes, boss, sorry, boss, and then continue to not do the impossible because it's impossible. Funny Music Man also has smart things. I'm glad people are still showing up for the Funny Music Man. I really regret how long it's been since I was able to do stuff in that space. So it means a lot that the channel's still getting attention. I still get sponsorship offers. Like, most of them are fake or from products that I don't want to promote, but they are coming in. Kind of now more than ever, which is very confusing to me. I'm like, you've checked my, like, upload dates, right? Like, how did you guys even find me? Your analysis of Shadowlord made me love the song even more. Me too! That's the funny thing. I don't know how. This is bizarre to me, but I did not notice how good Shadowlord was until a bunch of people in YouTube comments asked me to talk about it. And now it's maybe my favorite piece in the first Nier game. It's so good. It's so good. And I never would have known if I didn't make that video. Yeah, Pedro knows the story. Although most of what we're talking about is actually my dad's ideas. He published this at the end of 2024. Yeah, 2024. He actually he's getting close to finishing his second book, which I think has an amazing title. It's Exercise for People Who Hate Exercise as Much as I Do. He has spent the last, like, I think 6 or 7 years working really hard to find ways to be genuinely physically healthy and capable with as little movement as possible. And he's done a pretty good job. He's got a lot of knowledge about physiology, physical therapy, musculature. So he's been doing what he can to make it a genuinely useful book instead of he doesn't want it to be just like, here's how you feel a little better about yourself and burn 2 calories. Like, he actually wants to help people who are discouraged by exercise because it's so hard. Those ideas pass on to you in some shape or form? Yeah. I don't know how much of it is nature versus nurture, but my dad and I agree on most things. Like, the vast majority of things, my dad and I agree. And, you know, neither of us can say with any certainty whether that would still be true if, for whatever reason, I grew up without knowing him. But I think... I think that we're similar enough at baseline that I still probably would have ended up as, I don't know, as me as I currently am. Exercise is a drag, but it is good. Yeah. My dad and I also work from a slight disadvantage in that exercise doesn't give us endorphins. The only positive experience we have associated with exercise is the knowledge that we aren't actively atrophying, but it never feels good at any physical level for either of us, and that definitely makes it harder. Anyway, we're going back to first grade with this one. Use I messages instead of mind reading their thoughts and feelings. Use I think, I feel, I want, I think you want, I wonder how you feel when... Don't state things in imaginarily objective and absolute terms. Think about the impact of your tone of voice and wording and body language, and keep actively choosing genuine partnership over contention. That reminds me, last night I was watching a video where, like, a heckler in, like, a stand-up comedian's audience was saying, like, I feel sad for you because you don't believe in God. And it just struck me as like, that's probably a lie. Like the way she said it, I'm not saying that just on its face it's a lie, but the way she said it, I'm like, you're virtue signaling and you are feeding your own sense of superiority and patting yourself on the back for having figured life out. You're not actually sad for this person. He's doing better than you are. He's a stand-up comedian with a large audience. Probably makes more than you do. You're not sad for him. You just want to be better than him. So don't do that in your conflict resolution. Dragging is also a good exercise. Rethink the shared goal together. State your commitment to it. If stuck on specifics like, I want to go to the beach and you want to go skiing, get less specific. I want to relax, and I do that best when I am warm and listening to the ocean. But what do you want that you get from skiing? By shifting from specific tastes to goals, you may find a solution that combines both or is different from both. I just came back from my first ever trip to Japan, and my friends and I discovered that we travel very differently. Two of the four of us really like to fill every day as much as possible and just be on the move, on the move, on the move, seeing. And the other two of us, while really enjoying that, need breaks here and there where we're just in the hotel for a little bit. And obviously there are also some vacations where you don't really leave the hotel at all. But where was I going with this? Just in terms of like, I do think it's important to figure out what different people want from a trip when you're planning a trip together, because you're probably not all going to want the same thing in the same way. All four of us wanted to experience Japan as authentically as possible, but we had different preferences on how I guess steadfastly we were attached to that goal. Like, one of my friends and I, we wanted to challenge ourselves but still take time to relax, whereas the other two wanted to challenge themselves and not have time to relax. Which was fine, we just split up. Easy. Conflict resolution. Actually, it wasn't even conflict, we just split up. I don't remember what point I was trying to make. I am of the I need a break party. Hypothesis. Maybe you have a higher threshold to feel endorphins, so you don't really feel the good rush until you've pushed way past your expected comfort zone. Don't want to project, but I just remembered when I finally breached a barrier in martial arts once, reaching an exercise high that I had never thought possible. I mean, yeah, it's possible. I think it might, at least for me, my dad doesn't really suffer with depression. For me, I suspect it may be related to depression, in the same way that caffeine doesn't do anything for me at all. I can and have had caffeine immediately before going to bed and staying asleep. I've also done so an hour or 2 hours after having caffeine. It does nothing for me. And I don't think that's because, there are... Well, I don't think it's because I'm immune to caffeine. I think it's like you said in Revenant, I think my threshold is just really high. And, yeah, I think you're right, that I probably just haven't hit that threshold. But based on what I know about my physiology, I think it's likely that I can't realistically hit that threshold. I don't think it's an option for me. At least not one within my physical health, within my physical capability. You'll need to go into detail about your trip sometime. I can talk. I got stuff to say. I'm gonna be going through all the pictures with my sister later today, and I'm excited for that. I could upload them to the Discord server, but I feel bad because I feel like I never really participate in my own Discord server, and I don't want to just suddenly show up and be like, here's the lovely time that I had. I'm not going to read your posts. I don't have the energy. I'm sorry. I have better things to do. But now that I think about it, it's my fucking server, so if I can't talk on it, who can? Maybe I should just post stuff. I'll think about it. But yeah, we went to Tokyo for about a week. We went to Kyoto for about a week. And it was good stuff. I will say, I took nearly all of my pictures in Kyoto. It's just a prettier city. Tokyo very much feels like New York City to me. New York City is obviously filthy and dangerous in a way that Tokyo is not. But in terms of just the hustle and bustle, the concrete jungle, the sense that the city is an organism with a singular purpose, like all of that's there. And then Kyoto is where you actually see Japanese stuff. Akihabara is just New York. It's just Manhattan with anime. Kyoto seems more interesting. Every single Japanese person I've spoken to, and when I say that, I mean person who grew up in Japan, every single one I've spoken to about traveling to Japan has recommended Kyoto over Tokyo, including the ones who grew up in Tokyo. And yeah, I think the reason is clear. And we even knew that going in. Like, the reason we wanted to do both cities on our first trip was because we wanted to do the anime bullshit too. We knew that Kyoto was going to be the more authentic, more cultural experience. But we wanted, I mean, the whole reason we're interested in Japan in the first place is we're all weebs. So we wanted to go to Akihabara and buy stupid anime shit. And we went to a Final Fantasy XIV cafe. It was amazing. They had this thing called Honey Toast. I don't know if that's from the game. I haven't gotten very far in it. My friends have, though. My friends are, well, all three of them are very regular players. They had this thing called Honey Toast, which was just like half a loaf of white bread toasted with honey inside of it. It was so bad for us. Like, I think my friend actually said, like, we all sat down at the table and he was like, I want to leave feeling bad. And boy, did we. It was so good. Did I meet Hatsune Miku? Of course I did. Why would you even ask? I mean, she's the mayor of Japan. I just wanted to say something stupid, and I think I succeeded. No cherry blossoms yet, fortunately. Because I think my allergies would not have tolerated it. Also, Japan is suffering from over-tourism right now, and that gets way worse in the spring because of the cherry blossoms. So, many of the trees were bare, but it was still very pretty. I was just going through my pictures yesterday and, like, deleting out of similar photographs, just, like, deleting the ones that aren't my favorite of those. And even just going through some of the photos, they took my breath away again. Even just seeing, like, it's such a beautiful country. Hold on. Let me find some pics to share with you right now. This is in Kyoto. Oh, that's terrible glare. Hold on. This is in Kyoto. That was really pretty. There was some other really pretty stuff. Where's the other really pretty stuff? I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot. Here's a Jesus Christ. Here's a macaque by a little pond. I will post on Discord. There was this one shrine we went to that was absolutely gorgeous. I don't even remember what it was called. I don't remember why we went there even. Like, I think it was just, it happened to be nearby. We went to the bamboo forest, and there were multiple shrines in the area, and we just went to the one that opened when we were walking past it, and it was all stuff like that, man. It was so pretty. Stuff like I'm really struggling, aren't I? Stuff like that. Sorry, my hands are shaking. It's a medication side effect. I mean, fuck, dude. This is all Kyoto. Fuck. Jesus Christ. I'm really struggling. That's Kyoto. Yeah, I'll post on Discord. Since it was still February, so like at the early mornings, you would see frozen ponds and stuff. Like, that's all ice. That's a completely frozen surface with little maple leaves underneath. Okay, I'll post on Discord. Where were we? Talked about conflict resolution. Oh, I just remembered I need to actually keep my eye on the clock. I have a little time left. Conflict is never about the external thing it seems to be about on the surface. It is always about the internal state of mind one expects will be facilitated by the external thing. If X happens, then I will have Y. Then I will have Y. Freedom, peace, happiness, security, fun, excitement, status, recognition. The Y is the part that matters. The X is just a tool, rarely the only possible tool, and sometimes the wrong tool. You can liberate answers to conflicts by getting at the desired state of mind as something separate from the means employed to attain it. Oh, and that's the end of the chapter. That's kind of abrupt. A wild Elena appears. Hello, Elena. If it isn't a full-screen Baruchian Jonathan in its natural habitat. Lovely plumage. Love and compassion. Love. Being the most socially interdependent creature on the planet is not a great way to be the happiest creature on the planet. We have a choice to make. We can start with Disney-esque fantasy expectations and count all the ways life comes up short. Or we can start with expectations based on what we observe in real life and work for the best we can attain. Most of us get to feel at least partially well-loved by one or two parents or other prominent adults in our lives. Some are much more fortunate, but many don't even have one adult who loves them really well for who they actually are. I once read this question on an online forum. What is it like to have genuinely loving and caring parents? The question made me mournful for the person who asked it. To feel so entirely unloved as to ask this of complete strangers on an anonymous forum is terribly sad. Yet, if we are honest, to feel less than fully loved and accepted by both of one's own parents is extremely common. That common deficit makes it hard to love oneself, to feel well loved by anyone else, to feel that you deserve love, to not recreate unloving relationships. Even if one grew up with great parents, there is always some need for subsequent self-parenting, and for having friends and loved ones who are good at loving us in ways that continue, gap fill, or counter things we got from our original caregivers. Find ways to minimize your contact with people where minimizing contact is best. Imagine concrete things you can do to reduce your exposure to them, and what you will gradually gain from doing that. What can you gain instead from being with people that nurture you more fully? What can you gain from not just removing the negative, but displacing it with something positive? Referencing exercise. Well, to really get your endorphins and adrenaline going, let's make you drink 10 pounds of pure caffeine and have you eat a bushel of raw red bell pepper and then exercise really hard in the hospital, of course. Yeah, I'm with Pedro on that one. Why red pepper? Oh, no, yes, I am allergic to raw, produce. I don't know why we're specifying red pepper. I like red pepper. I like red pepper quite a bit. I like most of the things I'm allergic to, which is ironic because I am like neurotically aversive to most foods that I'm not familiar with because of how often mysterious unfamiliar foods physically harmed me as a child. And yet the things that I'm actually allergic to, by and large, I pretty much love. Where you have the most control of all, what can you do internally that improves how well you reparent yourself? What good can you acknowledge? What encouragement can you provide? What skills can you develop? What insight can you gain? What pride of accomplishment can you feel? What sympathy can you give? What wrong idea can you correct? What undeserved bad feeling can you relieve? What kindness can you show? How do you take good care of yourself lovingly today, now? How will you do it tomorrow, and many more tomorrows? People often say about relationships that the good must outweigh the bad. Let's be clear. 51% outweighs 49%, but that is not a relationship worth preserving. I hope you will take much better care of yourself than that and only remain in relationships that significantly beat this marginal existence. Think 85-15 or better, not 51-49. Although, take the 51-49s where you can get them, I say. That's my own addendum. I'm not putting words in his mouth like that. By definition, you're better off with a 51-49 relationship than without it. I am definitely the kind of person who needs a limited number of close relationships in order for me to service them all properly. That sounded sexual. But to me, if a relationship is 51% good and 49% bad, that is factoring in the opportunity cost and the energy cost of maintaining that relationship. So if on net your life is better with a relationship than without it, keep it. But make the relationships you have as good as you can. And actually, you know what? No. I'm gonna argue that because everybody's time and social capacity is limited, it is impossible for a relationship that marginally positive to be in service of you. I changed my mind. It is impossible for that merely marginally positive an experience with another person to be worth it. Your time and energy are just better served somewhere else. Too many close relationships kind of spreads it out too much. Yeah. And like everybody's definition of close is different. Actually, fun fact. I think that one of modern humanity's biggest problems is something called Dunbar's number, which is approximately 200, and it is the number of people you can genuinely care about at one time. Obviously, it's not the same number for all people. Obviously, it's not a hard number, but around 200 is the largest number of substantial relationships you can have at a given time. And most of those, the grand majority of those, are going to be pretty surface level. Obviously, like, you look at social media friends and you know more than 200 people. We certainly live in societies larger than 200 people, but we can only genuinely care about the interests of about 200 people. Unfortunately, there's more of us than that. The eternal food curse, the most delicious is the most dangerous. For real, why is that? Imagine this is why Vikings loved those red fly amanitas. What if you just care about people? Ha! Instant life hack. So true. If I care about one people, and that people is all of humanity, then I've only really cared about one person. Perfect. Good thinking, Revan. Cracked the system. Got him. Cheat codes. There is discomfort and cost in any relationship worth having, but that should not dominate the copious value you provide to each other. Love comes in many flavors: romantic, parental, friends and family, ice cream. It's hard to love and to recognize healthy boundaries at the same time. We sometimes love a lot and yet under-engage for a number of reasons. Motivated by love, it's also very common to over-engage. The Jonathan Twitch channel has 99 subs, so that's still good. Damn, triple digits soon. Wait, you mean follows, right? Can't be subs. I'd be paying my bills a little easier if it was subs. We genuinely want to solve problems for our loved ones, steer them clear of problems, protect them, optimize them, encourage them, give them what they need, fix them, and sometimes control them. Each of these, other than control, can be good, but only up to a point. For example, when we are overprotective, we reduce their opportunities to learn to cope under duress and to take care of themselves. Wisdom and restraint have to accompany generosity, for generosity to have its intended effect. Here is some good advice, often hard to follow. Quote, "You can be there for people without entangling yourself in their feelings, solutions, and outcomes. The most loving thing you can do is listen. The most empowering thing you can do is allow people to work through their own problems." Nedra Glover Tawwab. One of the most powerful things anyone can do for someone else is to just sincerely bear witness, making them feel seen and heard, cared for, and not alone. You can offer to help, but often the greatest help you can give is to show confidence in their ability to problem solve and respect the extremely personal differences in what a solution looks like for any two people facing ostensibly the same challenge. Love is not only about feeling close, it's also about the artfully just right amount of respectful distance. Quote, "People take different roads seeking fulfillment and happiness. Just because they're not on your road doesn't mean they've gotten lost." His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. Ooh, I like that one. That should be on like an embroidered pillow. That's good. That's a good one. I think that's my version of like a Bible verse on my mantelpiece. I'm a quiet person, and it's kind of funny how many people just start talking when given the chance. I always listen, though. You're a very good listener. I know that firsthand. Yeah. I have found that as somebody... I do like to talk, actually. I wouldn't consider myself a quiet person, but I am very interested in giving space for everybody else involved in a conversation. And sometimes what that means is I barely speak at all because there's just not room for me to. And the funny thing is, like, I know some people who think I'm very fun to talk to. And I'm pretty sure all I ever say to them is, yeah, uh-huh. Wow. Really? I didn't know that. And they love me. I can't always say that I have a great time with them, because usually people who talk that much and listen that little aren't as interesting as they think they are. But sometimes it really is interesting to just listen. Where was I? Compassion. Oh yeah, really? Compassion. If I had to reduce Buddhism to a single objective and simultaneously a single objective and simultaneously a single benefit, it would be equanimity. A close second place goes to compassion. Equanimity allows one to see things as they are and respond impartially and without illusion. Compassion ensures that the effect of equanimity runs warm and not cold. Applying compassion without equanimity, one risks being overwhelmed by suffering, risks not holding people accountable when that is best for everyone, and risks having too large an emotional investment in outcomes one cannot or should not control. Conversely, applying equanimity without compassion risks being indifferent to the challenges and suffering of others, seeing others through the distortion of a pejorative illusion, and treating them harshly. The same applies with respect to oneself. Actually, now that I think about it, equanimity without compassion is like textbook fictional robot syndrome, right? It's coming at the trolley problem from a strictly mathematical standpoint. It's killing half the it's doing the Thanos thing, like killing half the universe to save the other half. Like it's an overcommitment to, I was gonna say optimism, but I mean optimization, which is a very different thing. An overcommitment to optimization. The same applies with respect to oneself. Anytime you condemn yourself, check the state of your self-compassion. Anytime you excuse yourself, check the state of your impartial equanimity. In each case, evaluate as best you can if you are on or off target. One definition of wisdom is to function with equanimity and compassion in well-tuned balance. Differentiating between compassion and letting people off the hook can be tricky. Even so, if one is to live morally and insightfully, having a lot of compassion is a great starting point. Yeah, screw you, Elon Musk. The simplest entry point into compassion is the simple idea of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In more modern parlance, don't be a dick. Let's develop this further. When you pass someone begging and think it's sad, that's sympathy. When you feel an internal echo of despair, fear, dependency, or other things you imagine are felt by the person doing the begging, that's empathy. It's more engaged than sympathy. It shares and therefore personally knows the other's feeling, or at least what you would feel in their circumstance. When you feel moved to do something about it, that's compassion. When you do something about it, that is justice. I don't know if I fully agree with that. Because you could be wrong, and then it's not justice. But if you are actually seeing things through and being respectful of their circumstances and how they differ from how you would feel in those same circumstances, and you have open communication with the person and you do something about it, that's justice. And I'm sure my dad would agree with that, but that's less of a soundbite, isn't it? That's more complicated. This is one of several places where Buddhism tells us that good intentions are not enough. Well, there we go. Action is required. The word karma means action. A great deal of good karma is action that is responsive to compassionate feelings. It's nice to feel sympathetic, empathetic, or compassionate. It makes a difference when you take action. Quote, Fruitless are the fair words of one who does not practice them. Buddha. Quote, the smallest deed is better than the grandest intention. John Burroughs. Quote, it is our choice of good or evil action that determines our character, not our opinion about good or evil. Aristotle. Many of us worry that money we give to someone who is begging will go to smoke or drink or drugs or even just junk food instead of good food, needing clothing or shelter. We want to know that we are giving this person something of true value. What someone who is begging deeply needs and rarely gets is for others to have and model respect for their dignity. If you want to give them something without further insulting their dignity, give them what they have asked for and let them make their own decisions. Don't patronize them by imposing your decisions. Makes me think so much of how in the US right now, there's a really big push for the food stamps program to not be valid to exchange for junk food, which is, it is a complicated issue because yes, we're a very unhealthy country, but that's mostly the corporation's fault for what is available on our shelves at the prices they're available at. And I understand I understand the standpoint of, like, hey, if we're all paying for these people's nutrition, the least we can do is make sure that it's actually nutritious. I get that argument. I get where those people are coming from. But to presume that poor people should earn the right to do bad things to their body is bizarre. Especially since being poor is not a moral failing to begin with. Just... no. Sorry. If you want to have junk food, if you want to drink soda and eat candy like a normal fucking person, you gotta be economically viable, my friend. Seems like a fair bar. That's stupid as fuck. Everybody needs treats. And yeah, I do think that the government should pay for that if they need to. That's part of giving everybody the same experience of life. Anyway. Listening versus conversation. I have a friend who always spends a certain amount of time to find the words she wants to say aloud, and it usually coincides with the same amount of time that we've been conditioned to as being the appropriate amount of time that goes into appropriate pause, also known as being silent long enough that the previous speaker might say something more to carry the conversation a little further. Every time we meet, I have to readjust to her timing, and I'm delighted to, but it's thought-provoking just how ingrained that just conversation is for many of us. That is an interesting point. I remember when I first heard this, I didn't think I agreed with it, but the older I get, the more I think it's true. And that's that when we use filler words, not all filler words, but when we grunt, for lack of a better word, the uhs, the ums, the blah. Okay, maybe not the blah, but when you just kind of make sound as you're waiting for your thoughts to catch up to you, you're actually indicating that it's not an appropriate pause. You're indicating, there's more coming, I'm not done. And when you're the other person in that situation, it doesn't mean you can't start speaking, but it is a little rude if you do. When you you're basically reserving a table for yourself in the conversation. So it sounds like maybe your friend doesn't use those sounds. Grunting saves lives. Which is interesting because I think, at least in English-speaking areas, I think it's just so ingrained. She doesn't grunt or that would do it. That does sound like a recipe for getting interrupted. I feel for her. The usual mistranslation of the Hebrew word tzedakah, I'm sorry, I've betrayed my heritage, I don't know how to pronounce that, is charity. An accurate translation would be righteousness or justice, just as a tzaddik is a person who is righteous and just. Charity versus justice is a very significant distinction. The assumption in charity is that someone needs something they cannot obtain on their own for one or more reasons, possibly including their own failings. To act on this may be a form of kindness, or of patronizing delusions of one's superiority. By contrast, the assumption in fighting an injustice is that someone has been morally wronged, as could likewise happen to me. To act on this is a form of standing for what is right for any and all of us. It is a form of do unto others. Charity, even when given in kindness, separates us. Acting in favor of justice highlights that we are in this life together. Consider again that person who is begging. Shall I wonder if they are lazy or incompetent or in some way blameful or inferior, or shall I assume that the stream of circumstances that brought them to this point could have equally unjustly happened to me? Shall I believe that it is possible to deserve to have to beg? Or shall I believe that if there were more justice in this world, no one would end up needing to beg? What is my philosophy? Who am I? Shall I take pity on others who are less fortunate, pretending that my own better fortune is more deserved and secure than it actually is? Or shall I admit to the frailty of life and seek more compassion and justice for all? Judaism says that even those among us with the greatest burdens and the least resources can and must do what is within our means to help others as a normal part of daily life. By this point in the book, you can see that this is also consistent with a Buddhist way of thinking. In Buddhism, exercising compassion by default every day, constantly, is an explicit objective. As we noted in an earlier chapter, humankind's best ideas recur across cultures. Quote, it is justice, not charity, that is wanting in the world. Mary Wollstonecraft. Taught not to. That's definitely possible. I get your friend. That's how my therapy sessions went when I used to go, oh no! It took so long in some of my responses I felt a bit bad for him as he waited like a full minute. That's therapy though sometimes. In Norway, obviously unhealthy, usually sugar-rich like sodas or chocolates, are taxed a lot, sometimes costing double or more than what they would have cost without such taxes. The problem still remains, though, that healthy foods have been and still are somewhat expensive to begin with, but Norway just made it even more expensive to eat less healthy. Yeah, that feels like an imperfect solution, to be sure. It's like, cool, now I can't afford any food. Thanks, government. And that is the point we're getting to in the US, at least. I mean, it's somehow both ironic and fitting that as these restrictions are coming to food stamps programs, people are flocking to food stamps programs. He has paid for it, yeah. That's what therapies do. Yes, therapies, not therapists. Therapies. The people. Sorry. Many people are compassion deficient. Sorry, that's not how you say that word. Many people are compassion deficient, exceedingly self-interested. Their self-interest might include those closest to them as an extension of themselves, but not because of a primary concern for others. Conversely, many people are generously compassionate towards others, but deficient in self-compassion, rarely treating themselves with as much understanding and kindness as they readily give to anyone but themselves. Other people have what we might call an excess of self-compassion. But this is not a form of compassion. It is just a refusal to hold themselves accountable to reasonable expectations. Even when pursued in earnest, healthfully balanced compassion faces three major challenges. One is that taking care of self and others are often in contention, and over-focusing on one is much less challenging than finding good boundaries. Another is that most of us have either been damaged in a way that makes us think too little or too much of our own needs, so we are starting from an imbalanced state of mind. Thirdly, we often fail to distinguish well between understanding and approving. We incorrectly believe that understanding implies agreement, or at least forgiveness. We rarely arrive at a point of understanding someone's bad behavior and still considering it unacceptable. Quote, "You must not hate those who do wrong or harmful things, but with compassion, you must do what you can to stop them." His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. Ooh, Dalai Lama's hitting it today. Oh, here's another quote from the Dalai Lama. Quote, "Practicing forgiveness does not mean accepting wrongdoing." His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. We can understand... Hold on, I do have to get going. So, okay, this chapter isn't too much longer. But I'm going to have to... I might have to pick up the pace a little. We can understand, even empathize and forgive, and still conclude that some particular bad action must stop. If the harm done is bad enough, we can understand yet not forgive. Again, by understand, I don't mean to accept or tolerate. I just mean comprehend. You can understand how someone came to be a jerk without giving them opportunities to be a jerk to you. You can understand how they came to be a jerk and be sympathetic, yet still try to help them to stop being a jerk. You can understand and still just walk away if that's realistically the best available option. Sometimes a single event ends a relationship. More often, something more fundamental to and recurring within an ending relationship has happened too many times. Some single event may precipitate the decision to end things, but it is usually the last straw, not the first. When the problem is big or recurring and cumulatively big, even if real change and improved behavior are in the offing, sometimes the damage already done is so great that the relationship ends anyway. It is possible to understand, even empathize, and forgive, and still end a relationship. In the case of a violent crime, we might understand, empathize, and forgive, and still conclude that the perpetrator should be imprisoned for the sake of protecting others. Perhaps at the same time we seek imprisonment, we will also seek reform of the societal conditions that increase the prevalence of this type of crime. That would be compassion in action, good karma. Perhaps we can help move the justice system in the direction of actual justice, and away from punishment that is demonstrably ineffective and even counterproductive. That would be just and compassionate, and it works. Footnote: Nordic countries, in Revenant, that have rehab-oriented open prison programs have very low crime rates and very low recidivism rates. This, of course, is due to more societal factors than just their prison programs, but it still shows that the response to crime in most countries massively over-relies on belief in revenge over doing something that actually helps. The rest of us are well advised to look not only at these prison programs, but also at the differences between their societies as a whole and our own. Consistently ranked as the countries with the happiest citizenry despite high taxes, they are clearly doing something right that the rest of us could learn from. Imagine every individual on the planet all at once feeling happy, contented, and compassionate. Now try to imagine these people going to war. War happens when people are unhappy, discontent, and compassion deficient. If a communist, socialist, and capitalist are each truly happy, contented, and compassionate, they can disagree completely, and war will remain off the table. If a Jew, a Muslim, a Christian, and an atheist are each contented and compassionate, they can enjoy each other's company and learn from each other's perspectives. If two people in a couple are each truly happy, contented, and compassionate, they can disagree on something sensitive and important, and yet war between them will not erupt. Even when there is great pain, they will continue to see and respect each other as people, not enemies, each doing the best they can under significant duress. If you think international or interpersonal war is bad, note well, helping yourself and others to feel happy, contented, and compassionate could be your best possible anti-war protest. Quote, imagine what 7 billion humans could accomplish if we all loved and respected each other. A.D. Williams. He's describing anime antagonists, I think. What, talking about people with too much self-compassion? An authoritarian or social Darwinist or law of the jungle capitalist, by definition, is not happy, contented, and compassionate. Such persons desire an imbalance of power because they have desires and fears that are more intense than whatever happiness, contentment, and compassion they have. People who want similar benefits for all, anti-authoritarians, equal rights advocates, regulated capitalists, good relationship partners, are just acting on the most common rule in the world's many religions: do unto others as you would have others do unto you. It will be easier to do when we admit that it's easy to understand. Then all that is left is our strength of character, and we don't like to display weak character. Each of us should insist of ourselves that we follow this universal precept of do unto others with purpose and consistency, even in our smallest actions, and certainly in consequential ones. And certainly in consequential ones, not certainly inconsequential ones. We won't get it right all of the time, but we should be trying all of the time. And we will stop there. Thank you very much for coming. Oh, fuck. I shouldn't say this while I'm scratching my eye. That's fucking rude. Thank you very much for coming to my stream. It's been a while since I got to have an honest-to-God Twitch stream. I can't make any promises that I'm going to have things functional by this time next week in order to do some kind of game stream like I usually do. But I'll do my best. Fingers crossed. If not, I'll probably just do something on Discord like I've done in recent months. Good to meet you, Manone. Why? Manone? I'm glad you're here. Yeah, I'm sorry I was unable to stream the last 3 weeks. That was miserable, but well, I shouldn't say it was miserable. I was in Japan, but I'm glad I'm back. It's good to see you guys. I genuinely missed you. Cool. So I will post stuff on Discord for pictures. Not right now because I've got somewhere I need to be, but stuff. Yeah. Saturday we will continue watching. Pazer's been sharing Fantastical Children with us, so I think we're going to keep watching that. And then I will have another stream for you a week from today. Cool. Manoni is correct. I think I'm saying that right. Anyway, you went kind of incognito too. Unfortunately, I don't have an end of stream jingle for you this time because I just haven't brought those assets over to this drive, but I'll tell you what, I'll maybe I can find the file just loose and just play it. Search. Nope. I can't remember the file name. Okay, well, bye!